right, let me do a quick roll call. Ms. Smith, are you here?
Yes, I just got in. I'm so excited. Thank you. Here.
We know you are always excited to be with us late at night. Ms. Shepard, are you here?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Hillis?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Ms. Archibong?
I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Ms. Councilman Moore, you here?
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Mr. Farocki?
Here.
There we go. Ms. Pulandini? She was the one I wasn't sure about. All right. Let me see if we can get her back in, and then we will be ready to reconvene. Just one more second. All right. Ms. Pulandini is with us. So is Mr. Bronner and Mr. Higgs from the Beltline. I will make a motion to reconvene. May I have a second?
Second, Brown.
Thank you. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Brown. You will open that vote, please.
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond, how would you like to vote? Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. 7 yeas, 0 nays. We have reconvened. The last two things that I had on our where we left off, there is a third amendment to 21-0-0049 that was passed around several hours ago. It is labeled Farocki 3. Mr. Farocki is on the line. Either he or Ms. Archibong will be speaking to this amendment. And then I know that after that, Mr. Bond, you mentioned that you had a couple questions that you wanted to ask. So, Mr. Farocki or Ms. Archibong?
Well, this is Ms. Archibong. I think Mr. Farocki should introduce the amendment. I support it. It's excellent. And then I have a series of questions that I want to ask. So if we can do maybe the amendment first, and then I'll wait and do mine second.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Farocki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the committee for allowing me to be with you for today and for this amendment. I'll just say at the outset, I think the proposed SSD is a reasonable approach to completing the Beltline, and the Beltline, when it's finished, will have lots of fingerprints on it because it's taken, as predicted, a number of years to complete. To the extent we can help accelerate that to lift up the benefits of it in its entire circuit, I think our city will be better for it. And these types of ambitious projects reap rewards for generations, if not centuries. And so I think we're all lucky to be living and helping shape policy at a time when we're helping kind of drive a massive public works project that's changed our city for the better and taught us some lessons in the process. But I offer an amendment that Councilor Archibong and I have brought to you really to try and save one of a fledgling nascent bootstrapping CID, the little 5-point CID, which sits on the far eastern edge of the Beltline planning area, which, as everyone knows, forms the footprint for the proposed SSD. Some of their properties will remain in the SSD, but this amendment proposes essentially, and I don't know if y'all have a map in front of you, but if you look at the Beltline planning area overlay, it includes some bulges that are wider than the typical half-mile width of it on each side of the Beltline. And that was, at least in this case, on this part of the East Side Trail, because when the Beltline was being planned, they didn't know if the Beltline was going to jog to the east or to the west as it came through from kind of the north side of DeKalb Avenue to the south side of DeKalb Avenue. And the Beltline jogged to the west and not to the east, but yet this map still reflects a planning area as if the Beltline were to have jogged to the east. So that this part of the planning area is actually fairly far away from the Beltline itself. And so the proposed amendment does not cut very much into the overlay at all. It simply kind of draws a straight line down Moreland Avenue and shaves off a kind of semicircle, a mile semicircle. It's really a few blocks for about half a mile, and not even probably a quarter of a mile on the west side, on the east side of Moreland Avenue. And this straddles both District 2 and District 5. I think it's worth noting that the east side properties that are included in the SSD, because of their valuation and because of the density of the number of properties, will contribute the lion's share of the SSD revenue. And I think that's fair given the benefits that have accrued to the east side because of the Beltline. And I think it's worth this being kind of an all Beltline effort to get this completed. And I think I speak for many East Siders that are eager to see the benefits accrue to other parts that have yet to be completed. And so I will just ask for my colleagues' kind of consideration that this amendment is really to ensure that the little 5-point CID can continue to survive into the future. They generate less than $100K a year, and barely have enough to keep a full-time ED employed, as I know there are a few other similar CIDs in the city. But this is not a big CID at all, and just trying to help them survive and also get this SSD through. So I will turn the floor back over to Councilmember Archibald.
Thank you. I make the motion, and colleagues, I would say that these parcels are in DeKalb County, and the SSD is anticipated to be 100% in Fulton County. Clyde and Rob can respond to that, but that was my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay, so if that's true, these parcels are in DeKalb County.
No, I'm sorry. I thought the question was the boundaries of the SSD were intended to be within the planning area, which does cross over into DeKalb County.
No, that's not what I asked. I was asking if the SSD was intended to be entirely in Fulton County or not. That was kind of what I was asking.
Right, and the SSDs, it includes DeKalb parcels that are within the Beltline planning area.
We don't have any parcels that are in the Beltline planning area if you take the half-mile radius as the boundary.
Right.
In DeKalb.
But the planning area is based on the master plans based on ordinances that created a community engagement framework for the Beltline, and then the master plans that were developed as a result and incorporated into the comprehensive development plan for the city. That's what defines the planning area boundaries.
So, Clyde, you just said that Fulton County is intended to be where the SSD analysis and request is going to be working through the Fulton County tax commissioner's office.
So,
in terms of collection and all that.
Yeah, Madam Council Member, could you say that again? I think I'm getting bits and pieces. Well, let me see if I take it off speaker. Yes. So the TED
is 100% in Fulton County. I know the SSD is another, I was going to say animal, but it is not the same as the Beltline TAD. But we've never had a TAD or any sort of taxing of some special something like this that incorporates Fulton and DeKalb. DeKalb County has been completely excluded from the Beltline. The part of it.
That is correct about the TAD. I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood your question. I thought your question was about the SSD boundaries.
No, of course,
if you're talking about
I'm talking about the SSD, but I was comparing to what happened with the Beltline, so I was comparing it. But we're only talking about the SSD.
Okay.
All right. So the motion. So I'll make a motion that we exclude the parcels that are in DeKalb County, as Atlanta and DeKalb has never been within a half mile of the existing Beltline, and the SSD boundary is in every other place is half a mile. Is that correct? On either side?
No, the SSD is within the Atlanta Beltline planning area, which is generally a half mile, except where the TAD extends beyond. So
Atlanta and DeKalb has never ever reaped any benefit from this the Beltline, and so my motion is to remove the DeKalb County parcels.
We've got a motion on the floor. I'd like to ask a clarifying question. It's my understanding that the planning area was adopted by council in 2007. Can anyone who is on the call who was either here in 2007 or knows that to be true confirm that the planning area that we've been discussing this entire time was set 14 years ago?
Yeah, but we have an opportunity. Let's say that's not debatable. I don't think that's the debate. I don't think that's the question. I'm saying that, and agree with Mr. Faroki, that not because of the CID having, growing pains and all of that, but because DeKalb Atlanta has traditionally been exclusive. Check every single TAD that the city has ever done, DeKalb County and Atlanta. We have never, ever reaped any benefit from that. So it's patently unfair to now tag your check the map. There's not a single dollar of any TAD that has ever touched Atlanta and DeKalb. So because in 2007 what was true, but there was no taxation on DeKalb County and no special benefit to DeKalb. That's one thing. But right now we're asking for something special, something different, something more. And so from that basis, I would say exclude these parcels. And that is the motion. And if we need a second, I'll go ahead and second it.
We have a motion from Ms. Archibong.
Second? Okay. It is getting late, okay?
It is.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Oh.
Well, I don't think you need a second in committee, right?
Let's see if we get one.
Mr. Bond, that's correct, as best I can tell.
Mr. Faroki, but paired to Mr. Bond from yesterday.
Yep.
Thanks, different.
I don't remember how yesterday happened, and whether you all took a vote.
That is correct, Mr. Faroki. That's correct. This is Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay. Y'all took a vote yesterday without a second, Ms. Shepherd?
Yeah. It doesn't require a second, even though our system says give a second, but legally it doesn't require a second.
Okay. I'm getting word from the
point
staff
of order, I believe it has to be a voice vote.
Yeah, that is what I was just about to say as well. We'll go first. So we've got a motion on the floor. There is no second. We will entertain that. All right. There's a motion by Miss Archibong, a second by Mr. Bond. Mr. Faroki, did you still have a comment you wanted to make?
No, thank you. Councilmember Archibong made a compelling summary.
Yeah. No, I agree that she did. I'm going to vote against this motion. I think it is.
Can we retake the motion again? Because I'm a little confused. I'm really confused, guys. So somebody's going to have to break it down just a little better
Happy
for
to.
me.
So there's a motion on the floor to consider what in our packet from 2:54 p.m. was called Faroki Amendment number 3. And what it essentially does is changes the boundaries of the planning area so as to end it at Moreland Avenue. And it currently extends beyond Moreland Avenue for a piece that captures the Edgewood Retail District, frankly, and a couple other establishments. And so I can resend that to you if that would be helpful. While I'm doing that, I will say that having personally talked to the folks at the little 5-point CID and being sympathetic to the comments that Councilmember Archibald just made about the differences between Fulton and DeKalb, I think when we start having a conversation about changing the boundaries of the planning area, that's a very slippery slope. And all one would need to do is look at how significant the planning area is from a geographic perspective in the Northwest area to take us down a road that would be concerning and challenging in terms of being able to move this proposal forward. And so I hear the heartburn and the concern, but I have confirmed that the planning area all across the city was adopted by council in February of 2007 and approved by the mayor. And so for the last 14 years, this is the planning area that we have used, and that has been the basis of conversations on this topic for the last couple months. And I would caution us against making changes in any part of the city, frankly. So, Ms. Shepard, I'll send it to you one more time, and then Mr. Faroki has one more comment.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say in response, as you all consider your votes, the fact that the planning map was created in 2007 is instructive because it was called a planning map before the Beltline was ever built in any capacity. And this portion, which is a very small bit, does not affect the ability of the SSD to complete its goals by carving out these few blocks. This portion, which is included in the planning map, was done so premised on the Beltline coming its direction. It did not. I always want to make that point that a planning map used for taxation purposes, I think, is a different use of it than we've used in the past. And then the second thing is I understand Councilmember Westmoreland's concern about the quote unquote slippery slope. However, we're at the end of this meeting, and there's 3 amendments in total that have been considered. Now things could change by next Monday, certainly, but there's not a long line of amendments that have been teed up or even discussed. And so I think that's a little bit of it's potentially a valid concern, but it's yet to materialize. And so I think the fear of other amendments should not erase what is I think a fairly well-reasoned, as Councilor Archibald articulated best, justification for this mild, not even mild, this very, very minor adjustment to the map to exclude the DeKalb County property. Thank you.
Well, and I'd like to ask a question. I heard the comment from the caller during the public hearing who stressed the fact that they wanted to make sure that in sub-area 8 that they would not shift the proposed location east or west, and she wanted to know that it is where they projected that it would be. Well, spoiler alert, the east side is completed. It's not moving. There are no questions. The DeKalb Atlanta has reaped no TAD benefit ever. This is patently unfair. And to use a basis for it that in 2017, in the early going, it was drawn in. I guess we should have run back and corrected it because, wow, something like this was going to happen in 2021. sorry I didn't have a crystal ball, but it's patently unfair. Patently unfair. And it is, false comparison to compare a section that's completed with something that's yet to be done. So what I'd like to propose is that I ask my questions and we come back to the amendment. How about that? Can I do that?
You can withdraw your motion, and Mr. Bond can withdraw his second.
Okay.
Or not. I mean, that's fair. If you have questions that you want to ask while the motion's on the floor, you can do that.
Yeah, because the parliamentarian is on to eat dinner. All right, so. All right, I had a few questions about this. So, in looking at the slide, Clyde mentioned that there have been stakeholder meetings over the past 60 days. How long has this SSD been under consideration?
I actually do want to have a question before we move down this. My understanding is that questions
have to be related to the motion.
Yeah, have to be, exactly. Yeah.
Well, go ahead. I withdraw and I'll come back. Michael, please be ready for a second.
Mr. Bond, can you withdraw your second?
Aye.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so how long has the SSD been in consideration?
So Councilmember Archibald, this is Clyde. So, and again, I promise I'm not being, flip here.
Right.
But what do you mean? So, what do you mean by consideration? Like,
what did you mean by 60 days touch point?
So once we had significant support from property owners, we did our check-ins with each individual member of City Council, support from the mayor. Then we were in. That's when we felt that it was really in motion at that point.
I see. So how many? When you met with me, one of the questions that I asked, and it still disturbs me now. I asked you how many business associations or small groups of entrepreneurs that are working together to improve their communities, CIDs or whatever. I asked the question, how many had been engaged in this process? And the answer was none, and could I help them identify where they are? That's very disturbing because they are drawn into this and they're going to be impacted. And so I appreciate from a sort of top-down perspective, you have your 8 votes, but at a granular level, in the middle of a pandemic, or hopefully moving closer to winding down, I'm concerned about that. So that's why I was asking how long had this been in consideration, because I don't think that 60 days of touch points is sufficient given the impact on those businesses who had absolutely no idea that this was being considered. So I know this has been going on for a minute, more than 60 days, and I do appreciate the approach that you took, but from the vantage point of the struggling business owner, I'm concerned. I sent an email also, so my second point is I sent an email and I asked the question, I did not get an answer, but I asked the question, what difference would a year make? Implementation in 2023 versus 2022. What difference would that make financially? 1 year. And the reason I ask that question is the projections from economists and look at the CDC. We're going to get through 2021 trying to get to herd immunity and getting everybody vaccinated and all of that. And then we are hoping that starting 2022 and beyond, we will be able to catch our breath and then move forward in a resilient way. And so my question was, what if we did all of our due diligence? A number of the callers and the people that I've heard from have said they want more time. They want to understand more about how the accountability, transparency piece. I know we will be tackling that or have tackled that in some amendments. But there was a consistent refrain that said, can you slow this down? And it's because there were only 60 days of touch points, frankly, I think. And if we could allow for sensitivity to the fact that entrepreneurs are hanging on by a fingernail, and it is very true that it is a choice of whether or not to pass along additional taxes to tenants. The reality is everybody's suffering, landlords and tenants. And so the fact that this tax could be withheld from tenants versus the fact that it more likely be imposed upon the tenants, I think the likelihood of it being imposed is more likely than not. And so we have a federal government passing a $1.9 trillion bill trying to help small businesses, and at the same time, the city of Atlanta, we're considering imposing an additional tax that will impact businesses in ways that we don't know. And studies have shown that when it comes to small businesses, as a result of COVID-19, predictions as high as 40% of those businesses will never come back. I just think the timing is off. And it doesn't mean that the idea is wrong. And SSD is smart. I think that the opportunity that it provides is going to be a game changer. I think the timing is wrong. And what I don't understand is when, we hear what all the concerns are, they are articulated very clearly. I think Clyde gave a good summary, but he omitted the plea that he has heard and that I have heard, and I'm sure we all have heard, can we wait? And so I'm back to my email where I asked for what difference would a year make? Because when we have numbers and we have information, then we can make informed decisions. What we have now is, if you don't do it, we won't finish in time. My question is, if we don't do it now and we wait a year, what is the amount? And then we could work on trying to figure out how to get that amount. But it's something that is unknown, and I don't understand that. So my question is, what difference would it make if we waited a year?
So council members,
it's real quick, Rob. I'll just share a couple of points, and I want you to add in here as well. So what we have been hearing, for communities that do not have the Beltline, and I know your district is blessed with the East Side Trail, and what we are hearing from other businesses is, when are we going to get our slice of the Beltline? And so this wait narrative is not consistent with what some of the feedback that we're receiving from small businesses. And you heard this on some of the calls, the voicemails, and the feedback that we've received is, we need this to happen sooner rather than later. And to be quite frank, if we do not move this forward, we are in peril of actually completing this by 2030. On the current timeline of not completing it by the sunset, and I'm not talking about just the trails, but also the community benefits pieces that we've suggested with TAD growth and so forth. It is in peril of not being completed by the sunset of the Beltline TAD.
So if
you can,
yeah, I mean, if I may, I mean, and obviously Clyde and his team can speak, because it's not only about money. It's not only about money. It's just also about the time it takes to construct in terms of hitting that 2030 deadline. We also certainly put at risk the philanthropic funding, right? Because that, the philanthropic community needs to see that those who are experiencing the commercial upside from completion of the Beltline are in. So there's, it's not just 100 million, it's 200 million of funding that could be creating jobs now and construction activity now and spurring development now, that we would lose. And then the nature of the way the TAD works, with 10 years left, if you lose a year of TAD growth because of the uncertainty about whether or not the Beltline is actually going to get built, that's going to reduce the amount of TAD funding that is available over the next decade to complete, towards the other components of the Beltline. That said, I mean, we hear the concerns from small businesses. I mean, it is part of, why there's the commitment, and I think we all support the amendment that went in to increase the small business support by an additional, almost double, up to 12 million. And the timing of this, even if City Council were to act, this month, it would be towards the end of the year that it's on the property tax bills, and then depending upon, the leases with different tenants, it could be, a lot of true-ups happen in the first quarter. So that in many cases, it may be a year from now that those small businesses are actually seeing the financial impact.
So say that again, Rob. I want to understand that about when the tax bill might hit. Can you go through that again?
Sure. Yeah. So if this is approved, it would go on the property tax bills that come out in the fall, and it's somewhere in the September, October time frame. It varies a little bit year to year on the tax assessor side. For for example, but then for tenants, and I can say this because we're a tenant on the Beltline, when there is a change in our property taxes, there's a true up that happens after the end of the calendar year. So it's in that first quarter of the following calendar year where adjustments are made that if property taxes are being passed through as part of a lease. Now I'm not going to say that that's for 100% of leases. There's some leases that are structured a little bit differently, but I think it's a pretty common practice that the true up happens after the end of the calendar year.
So that's why I've heard that 2022 is when the real impact would be, but in reality, it could be as early as 2021.
Correct. The property owners would get the tax bills in towards the end of 2021 in the fall. That's correct.
Okay. I think I interrupted you. I just wanted to hear that clearly. Were you going to say something else?
I did not have any further to say. Did we answer your question about, in terms of timeline and what the financial impact of not starting now?
No, you have not said to me that if we were to do a 9-year SSD, whatever it is, versus this 10-year, how much would we collect in the 9 years versus the 10 years? That's what I wanted. I want it to be a mathematics thing, right? Where we are projecting that we're going to get X amount, but if we wait a year, we're going to need to have this much more money, or we're going to need to have something else. I wanted to understand what the difference would be in a financial sense, but all I get is the pressure that we got to do it, and there's this hard deadline. I'd like to just have it unpacked and so that I can understand it and get my mind around it. And I don't think that that's too much to ask. And saying that the philanthropic community wants to see us invest, us as a body saying that we want to do it and we identify the date certain, I think that that is evidence that we intend to do it. So I don't really understand what that part means either. And I commend you for all of the philanthropic and supplemental dollars that you have raised. It almost feels like if you ask any questions that there's something wrong with that. And I think questions and answers are helpful. And I'm just trying to get them so that I can understand. And just giving me the summary answer is not responsive, frankly. So is there a way to calculate if it were to start a year later, what that would mean financially? That may help me understand this urgency. Is there a way?
So I'm thinking through. I'm just receiving your question. So forgive the silence as I think through some of this.
Okay, we can come back to it. You can even tell me later. I'm going to abstain, so you can tell me later. But I do want to have that number, and I do want it shared with the council so we can compare apples and apples. And so, can you get that to me as you think about it and share it with everybody?
Indeed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate you mentioning that I represent the East Side where we're in good standing in terms of completion. And I know that makes my credibility as I raise these issues relative to timing. I'm not unmindful of that, but it doesn't mean that I don't understand and feel the pain of fellow entrepreneurs. I'm one myself. The reality of small business pain is real. And it's not separate from the fact that my side of the Beltline is done, but it's just another layer of reality that I don't want to ignore because I don't want to be tone deaf or insensitive. The other question that I have is the funds that will be available to help legacy families relative to displacement due to excessive taxation. What happens year 11?
And are you speaking? I assume you're speaking specifically about the Legacy Resident Retention Program.
Yes.
Yes. So the intent there is that the long-term solution for homeowners is not for the philanthropy to pay their taxes, long-term. The long-term solution is a policy solution around taxation that allows residents of all income levels to stay in the city. So we would be looking to work with a variety of partners to advance policy solutions that may require changes at the state level, and we understand that. But the thinking that 10 years would be a sufficient amount of time to advance those policies so that there is a sustainable long-term solution for those residents.
So in year 11, absent some additional changes in the law or some other funding source, in year 2030, every man for himself and God for us all, right, relative to how high the property taxes may be for legacy families. Right? Because I wonder
currently,
if 10 years is sufficient. Because we have not had a whole lot of success with changing tax policies. But we have had funds available to help families through like West Side Future Fund and that kind of thing. So I wonder if the 10 years is a long enough period of time to help reduce displacement. It's just a question.
And it's a very good question, and one that we can continue to explore.
Okay, cool. And relative to minority contractors, I did read that, and I think the $150 million is a wonderful goal. But what I didn't see was a commitment or a sort of focus on helping minority contractors become primes. You know, it would be a really amazing outcome if the effort is made to really elevate the ability of the contractors that are minorities to then move on in their destiny and able to take on bigger and more jobs. So that's just something else I would add as a thought. I didn't see it. I don't know.
Right, council member. Yeah, absolutely. And as we think about 2030 and the legacy of that specific benefit is to grow up minority firms truly to be primes. And we did not share those specifics. You know, perhaps that's a little bit esoteric to folks in the audience, but that is absolutely part of the push is to make sure that we leave a legacy of minority firms that have the Beltline on the resume, and then ultimately, you know, being able to lead specific opportunities, and that is a part of our work. And so, working with a number of organizations that help push, you know, that thought process, we're already in the throes of that as we speak.
Okay, I'd lead with that, because I think that's a game changer. It's different, and so it's important. We are trying to fight through this income inequality piece. So as many things as we have that demonstrate the sensitivity and awareness of that, I think is great. So I'm very, very happy to hear that. My next question is, do hospitals pay taxes? In one of your slides, you mentioned what percentage hospitals would pay. I thought hospitals were nonprofit. Is that not true? Are some of them for-profit? Help me with that. I guess I'm
sure.
thinking about great.
Yeah, so there are hospitals that have parcels that are taxable. So if they're medical offices, those are included. And some hospitals are for-profit hospitals as well. So we're basing that on the status that the Fulton County tax assessor has for those parcels. So they are paying tax.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure we were paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
One of the callers on public comment mentioned that they thought that there was a constitutional requirement relative to having, I think they thought that this was tantamount to a referendum that would have triggered the requirement to put it out to the electorate. Had you looked at that with your attorney, and do you know if that's something that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah. So if it's okay, could I buzz in legal Aisha Ken just to give some color there if that's appropriate?
Yeah. Good evening. Can you hear me? This is Ken Neighbors at McGuire Wood.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Good evening, Neighbors.
How are you? Through the chair, we actually have looked at this issue. Since about 1985 or 86, we've been, as a bond practice, doing intergovernmental agreement-backed transactions. Intergovernmental contract clause is a separate and distinct constitutional power which allows the city, in this case, to be contracting party under the IGA, not the issuer of a debt. And for an agency or authority or other public corporation to issue financing, bonds, take out loans to actually implement the services or facilities. So this is common to the city of Atlanta practice, is common to state practice. And so the provision that the commenter spoke about will not apply to the way this transaction is structured. Intergovernmental contract clause stands as a preemption, and it stands on its own.
So if the city were to be actually issuing the bonds and not through our economic development partner, it would be a different answer.
That would be a different answer. And the critical piece here, too, is that this really is, and I think you focus on it, this is a stacked model of completing the trail component of the Beltline, where you have philanthropic, you may have local, you have TIF, or tax increment, tax allocation district, that we call it in Georgia, and you have the realization from an SSD levy. And so all those things need to be brought together and brought to bear to complete the trail. And so it's not as simple as just doing an SSD plain vanilla bond deal. This is a bit more layered and focused. And so we are on very solid ground.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Go ahead.
Councilwoman and through the chair, would you mind if I actually speak on the other issue you raised about any modifications to the boundaries?
Not unless you agree.
Yeah, that's right. Ms. Archibald has the floor. Yeah, Ms. Archibald has the floor.
Wait a minute. If you agree with me, yes. If you don't, give it to yourself.
Then I would need to be debriefed and be seated if that's the case.
So you don't have anything.
No, it's you chopped up a little bit there, Councilwoman. What was that?
I said I don't hear anything else. I'm already, fighting an uphill battle. Don't add to my burden.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't. I'm sorry.
I got the floor.
Okay.
She does. Ms. Archibald has the floor.
Yes, ma'am.
I was trying to see if I had anything else. So now, all right. So now we have the amendment that we wanted to propose. And so, Mr. Attorney, I've forgotten your name. I apologize. What's your name?
Neighbors like next door.
And not enemy. Not enemy like I may be feeling like. Okay, cool. Neighbors. Okay. So this amendment, if you were to speak to the amendment that is proposing to remove those parcels located in DeKalb County, you would have an opinion that would cause us not to bring forth the amendment. Is that fair?
That is fair to say.
All right, so I don't want to hear anything else from you. All right, so I think I'm not going to introduce the amendment right now. Mr. Faroki? Mr. Faroki?
Yes, Madam Ms. Archibald. What was the last thing you said about the amendment?
Let's wait.
So you're not going to introduce the amendment?
No.
Because?
I'm smart. No. I think we have some more questions that we need to resolve through talking to Mr. Neighbors. So would it be permissible for Mr. Neighbors, this is to Clyde Hicks, for him to talk to Councilmember Faroki and I, or is he just your attorney?
Well, I would just say I think that the amendment is divorced from many of the questions you've asked, which are valid questions and should be asked, but I don't.
No, the last one.
Separate issues.
Go ahead,
yes, sorry. Madam. Yes, Councilmember Archibald. Yes, to your question about
okay,
neighbors. Yep. Yes.
All right. So thank you very much for that. So I'm getting from Mr. Faroki that he would like for the amendment to move forward. I will offer Faroki amendment number 3, add Archibald to that, and I bring forth the amendment removing those parcels located in Atlanta in DeKalb. Second.
There's a motion from Archibald.
And she also seconded too, by the way.
Second.
Thank you.
There's a motion from Archibald and a second by Mr. Bond. Mr. Hillis.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Westmoreland. I just wanted to speak to this amendment. They're talking about speaking about the bulge on the east side. I would just say if you want to see a bulge, then come to the west side. There's a large one that extends across my council district and Councilmember Brown's district. That's over 2 miles wide at one point. So I would like to hear Mr. Neighbors' legal opinion as to the legalities of, I guess, dicing off parts of this SSD.
I am here. Good evening again. I think the chair noted and Mr. Higgs and Mr. Bronner noted that the planning area is really the kind of the federal area that the city has determined is the appropriate impact area for the Beltline and its vision, and that drives the eligibility for federal funding. It is within that area that we intentionally drafted and crafted the boundaries of the SSD to really pick up what we believe to be the commercial trade area, the business area that's impacted by where we foster growth and where we anticipate fostering growth from the completion of the trail. And so to pull out areas having used that kind of lens for analysis, we think would actually be the thing that would make what we've done arbitrary. I think we have been very intentional and deliberate in drafting the boundaries thus far. And so you start peeling the onion back, and sometimes you don't know what you get.
Thank you for that. And just my last statement of just speaking to the timing of this and the possibility of waiting a year. I understand the issue that small businesses are facing, which is why we worked on an amendment to add an additional $5 million to that. Because if you look at the schedule here, parts of my council district, we heard a lot from Upper West Side CID and residents in sub-area 8. They've been waiting almost 15 years, and even going by this schedule, they're going to be waiting an additional 8 years. Some would say, we've waited 20. What's one more year? Well, we've waited long enough, and we're ready to see this happen. And just, I don't know if anyone saw the press release, but Sub-Area 8 only even got into scoping. Not even into it. They released the RFQ for scoping on yesterday. We are ready here in District 9 to see the Beltline come through. And that is all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hillis. We've got
Can I say something? I got bumped offline.
Sure.
Okay. Don't be so enthusiastic. So, I appreciate what Mr. Hillis just said, because it is patently unfair for part to be done and another part to be waiting in the queue, and I get that. And this whole exercise has brought that to everyone's attention. But I think what's getting lost, and maybe I'm not articulating it very well, I'm not asking for any slowdown of any work. What I'm asking about is information that we could see what is the financial impact, and is there a way to meet that in some other way? And if so, then nobody slows down, the small businesses don't get hurt. And by the way, as I understand with the CIDs that are around and included in this service area or the planning area of the Beltline, who had intentions of increasing their membership or having other ways to expand their CIDs, guess what? For 30 years, they're probably not going to be able to do that. So we don't want to miss looking at all of the intended consequences and unintended consequences as we look at making a decision with 30 years implications. And I'm just simply asking, respectfully, for there to be more financial information, because if it would make a $30 million difference, and we could find $30 million, and we don't inadvertently hurt small businesses, and we allow for this runway to figure out what else could be done so that everybody wins. I just want information. And with the information, then we can make a more informed decision. And relative to what Mr. Neighbor said, I'm not sure that this is a carve-off when it comes to Atlanta and DeKalb. There's never, ever been anything that Atlanta and DeKalb added to this pie. It hasn't. You haven't gotten a single tax dollar from it. You haven't done anything with DeKalb Atlanta. And I think a case can be made that it is measurably different and that it is not a peeling off and an arbitrary or anything. It is in alignment with the taxation that has happened here, the benefit that has or hasn't been derived. And so I just think it's a bit of a stretch to just say this is arbitrary. I think it's very smart. I think it's very fair. I think it's equitable. That's it.
All right. Thank you. We've got a motion on the floor, a second on the floor, a legal opinion on the floor, and a good bit of commentary. So if you will open that vote, please.
The vote is open.
Ms. Shepard. Mr. Brown.
I'm a no.
Two yeas, 4 nays. That motion is not 5 nays. That motion is not carried. Colleagues, we have the paper is before us, and that was the last amendment that we had. So I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve on substitute as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Brown.
Got a motion by Hillis and a second by Brown.
Mr. Chair, I had some questions before we...
Oh, I'm sorry. You sure did. That's right. I completely forgot. Damn. Okay. Julia, I know we just went through this thing about the motions and the seconds. Have I called it too much, or can we withdraw that that first and that second?
No, you don't have to withdraw it, Mr. Chair. I can ask my questions.
That's fair enough. Yes, you can. That's on the motion. Okay. Yep. Report. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation and for providing us information and questions. I, like everyone else on the committee and the council, have received numerous communications from the public, both for and against. But I've committed to ask a few questions that have been submitted to me. Some of this may have been answered, so please indulge me, but I want to keep my commitment to the constituents who asked me to put these questions forward. And so the first one is, what is the hard mill rate for this section? Is it 2.0 or 2.5?
Councilmember Bond, this is Clyde Higgs. It is 2, not 2.5.
It is not 2.5. Okay. And then the next question is, why is this tax not equitable? $1 million homes on the Beltline benefiting from small business tax improvements without patronage of the small businesses. They're adjacent properties. Why are they not being taxed and the businesses are?
So, Councilmember Bond, I'm going to ask council to weigh into this, but this uniformity in taxation mindset, I definitely want them to weigh in and articulate that for us. Yeah, there has been conversations out there about $1 million homes, but then maybe not taxing homes that are, let's say, $60,000. And that is a challenge to do that. But Ken, please weigh into that.
Yeah, this is again Ken Neighbors. Good evening, Councilman. Clyde is precise there. We focused on and drawing the boundaries on the businesses and the commercial trades that were most benefited by the trail segment, and because of the massing of those, they create a tremendous burden for the city as well. And so it made perfectly good sense to actually focus on a commercial trade area oriented SSD versus an SSD that had other uses in it. But when you're in the SSD, regardless of where your category is, if you're subject to taxes, you're subject to taxes. So we couldn't put a whole bunch of property in and then pick and choose who's subject to levy and who is not.
Okay. The next question is how much is being directed to Beltline enforcement from the funds that will be derived? And the $7 million, I guess it's 12 now since it's been amended. Is it a grant or a loan that will go to the businesses? Those are the next two.
To Councilmember Bond, in answer to the first question about use of funds, both through the legislation and the bonding, 100% of the project fund available would be, of that $100 million would be for completion of the corridor. So that's the design, construction, and land acquisition needed to finish the trail corridor. And then, Clyde, do you want to speak to the small business fund?
Yeah, so we definitely support the increase in that amount allocated for small businesses to 12 million. But a number of our programs right now are granting mechanisms. Full disclosure, we have not fully figured out what makes sense because there are benefits to a loan, as you can imagine, because it can be potentially revolving, and so still working out the particulars. But there will be a portion that will be grants, decidedly. But there also could be a portion of that fund that could be a low cost, low interest loan. So then we can then repurpose that back into to other small businesses out there as well.
Okay, that kind of leads into the next of the last couple of questions. So you haven't worked out the qualifying criteria then for those who would apply if you're still formulating the loan, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
If there are programs that are existing, Councilmember Bond, that we would expand, and that's already been perfected. For instance, facade improvement programs. That program would be expanded. Wouldn't be anything new, but it would just give us a greater reach into the type of businesses that we can support under that specific small business program.
And the final question from the constituents is, has the Beltline adjusted rents to tenants during the pandemic for any property that it owns or leases?
We do not, for the most part, have rental properties for residents that we specifically control.
Okay. And then I've got just a quick couple of questions of my own. I know that the special tax district can be an innovative tool, but years ago when I was in the spot where Mr. Brown is now, there was an issue over in Castleberry Hill where they had it's not a TAD, but it is a special tax abatement district. And so there was certain development that, along with H.J. Russell, other developers in that community wanted to do, but they had already had the time started on the tax abatement district. And so we worked out a solution for them because the development that was coming was starting after the original district had been created. They were about halfway through. And so we did an overlay that crossed the existing tax abatement district for the new developments which exist today. And so with that theory, have you all considered doing an overlay TAD district over the existing Beltline TAD, or maybe even taking in some other areas so you could collect a greater increment on the increase of the tax revenues for even greater, more contiguous properties? Is that something that you all had looked at or not, or when you were formulating what mechanism you were trying to use? Hello? Am I still?
You're here, and I'm
sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Mr. Bryant, there you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on mute, but I do want to offer my colleagues a chance to weigh in here. I think there was something like that contemplated, but there are just a number of potential challenges of even opening up that can of worms, if you will. But I would definitely want to give my team a chance to weigh into that concept. The short of it is we've tried to think through a number of things, and when we are met with legal and significant political challenges, then we can't come to a certain conclusion. But please weigh in.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I understood exactly what the council member was suggesting. So I'm actually not familiar specifically with the Castleberry Hill. So was the question, Councilmember Bond, whether we looked at putting a district on top of the tax allocation district?
Right, or maybe a little more expansive, either inward or outwards, to collect more properties to create a greater increment. And as the bonds original taxing district are paid off, shifting the increased increment to do some of these projects.
Yeah. So,
Rob, would you mind if I joined in here on the TAD issue? Yeah. Councilman Bond, good evening. Again, it's Ken Neighbors. Yeah, the quirky thing about our TAD or our redevelopment powers law is that if you change the boundaries, you have to reset the base value. And so you would lose. Yeah.
That's why I gave the example of what happened in Castleberry Hill.
There you go.
That's why I gave the example. We gave an overlay. And so the rate that was established at that time went into the new overlay. And so if you did the same thing, in or around or adjacent to, or, expanding inward or expanding outward around the existing Beltline TAD, only projects identified in the new TAD, of course, you could collect the revenue from. The new TAD could not benefit directly unless the city council decided to shift the revenue to another entity, such as the new TAD, but it wouldn't automatically. They would be prohibited on its face from using any existing funds from the existing TAD. And I just asked, if you all looked at that, but I guess you did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing I might add, my understanding, and again, I may not fully understand the model that you're suggesting there, but the TADs can't overlap, and in many cases, the Beltline TAD butts up against other TADs, whether that's the East Side TAD or Midtown or West Side and others. And so in some ways, the SSD almost, I think, may be functioning kind of in the same way that you're describing, although it's a little bit different mechanism. But at the end of the day,
Right.
maybe somewhere what you're suggesting. But Ken, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Patrice, Patrice may be on as well. Patrice, you in? She may be having comms issue. I'll step in. Yeah, the other thing is, and Councilman, you may remember, we created the 4 commercial TADs. We were getting very close to the 10% cap on creation of tax allocation districts in the city. And so, we can't, because of the success of the TADs, we're not at the point where we can create another TAD. And so we did look at any number of tools and tried to pick the best supplemental tools that would attack the problem and get this solved. And we really think this is the best. This is the best result. SST.
Okay. Thank you for that. And my final question, and I don't know if you all can answer this or if the law department needs to answer it. In passing this legislation, we create the district, and we have a proposed set millage rate. Would it require the city council to pass additional legislation to impose that millage rate? Because what we do with our own budget every year, we pass a budget based on the revenue that's raised, but whether we adjust our millage rate or not, we still pass legislation that quote unquote sets that millage rate. So we're going to be required to do another ordinance to set the millage rate for this special district, or does this legislation, it creates the district, but will we need to do another ordinance to actually set the rate of taxation within the district?
So yes, and Ken, if you may speak more to this, but I believe there are 3 ordinances that are moving, that they kind of go together. The one that establishes the district, the one that sets the millage rate, and I believe that's been introduced and assigned to Finance Executive Committee. And then there would need to be an intergovernmental agreement with Invest Atlanta, as Mr. Neighbors spoke to before. Councilmember Bond?
Yes, Councilmember Bond, this is Patrice Perkins-Hooker. I hope you all can hear me this time. All of those resolutions and ordinances, the ordinances actually have already been prepared, and you are correct in contemplating that the city has to enact the 2 mills, and that was part of the package.
And so, but it's not a part of this particular ordinance.
Not a part of the creation ordinance. You're correct. You have to create it, then you'd have to go to the city council, and finance actually is looking at that part of the package. Okay.
Thank you, Astro. It's good to hear your voice.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I'll yield. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for your questions. All right. We do actually, have a motion on the floor from business, Mr. Hillis, and a second by Mr. Brown. Are there any other questions or comments? All right. Will you please open that vote?
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
All right. 6 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. That item is favorable on substitute as amended. Our next item is number 32. Ms. Blandini?
There's a substitute in your packet for this. Would the committee like to bring forth the substitute, and then I'll read in that caption?
We would after Mr. Hillis. You are in line to speak. Would you like to say something?
No, go ahead and bring it up.
Okay, I'll make a motion to bring forward the substitute. Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hillis.
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Brown just had to step away. If you would mark him as such, please. Thank you. 6 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before us. Ms. Glendini, will you read that?
An ordinance by Councilmembers Dustin Hillis, Carla Smith, Matt Westmoreland, Joe Shepard, Michael Julian Bond, and Cleta Winslow, as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee, authorizing the City of Atlanta, the Atlanta Development Authority, and the Atlanta Urban Redevelopment Agency to proceed with the implementation of the Atlanta Beltline Trail Corridor Completion Project within the boundaries of the Atlanta Beltline Special Services District, providing for definitions, authorizing and approving the financing of the project by the authority and/or ARA, and any necessary or appropriate public projects ancillary thereto as part of the implementation of the city's redevelopment plan and urban redevelopment plan as amended, each as previously approved by the city, authorizing the preparation, use, and distribution, as the case may be, of an intergovernmental agreement between and among the city, the authority, and/or ARA, as reviewed and approved by Atlanta Beltline, among other documents and agreements in connection therewith, providing for parameters for said financing and for other related matters, providing for severability, and providing for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hillis.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Westmoreland. I do have one amendment to offer for this piece of legislation. This amendment goes, again, to tightening up language to ensure we're focusing only on the Beltline loop. In the substitute, there was some language that popped up that referenced spur trails. And while I'm a supporter of spur trails, there is one in the Proctor Creek Trail already in my district and more coming. We certainly need to only focus at this time on the 22-mile Beltline Trail corridor. So this amendment edits the first sentence of Exhibit A to strike, quote, and related 11 miles of spur trails. And so I make a motion to amend.
Got a motion on the floor to amend, which I will second. Any questions or comments? All right. We will open that vote, please.
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Thank you. Five yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. That item is amended. Any questions or comments? Excuse me. On this paper, or I will entertain a motion here as well.
Ms. Hillis, I'll make the motion to approve on substitute as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second? I will second. Questions or comments? All right. If you will open that vote, please.
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Thank you.
The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. That item is favorable on substitute as amended. Last item is number 34. We need to amend it to attach a fee study, and then we are going to continue to hold. Ms. Polendini, will you read that caption, please?
21-0-0063, an ordinance by Councilmember J.P. Matzegeit to amend the Atlanta City Code Part 1, General Ordinances, Chapter 158, Vegetation, Article 3, Tree Protection, to adopt a new tree protection ordinance for the City of Atlanta and for other purposes.
All right.
I will make a motion to amend to attach Exhibit B. Is there a second? Thank you.
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
That's what's up. Thank you. Ms. Archibong?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I abstained the last two votes. I was distracted. I don't know what it was, so I'll look at it Monday. You're going to have a report anyway, so I apologize. But these are just to amend, and this is not a final action, right?
No, not at all. We're just attaching a fee study, and then we're going to put it right back on hold.
Great. All right, thanks. But that's why I abstained. I wasn't in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. 5 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. The item is amended, and now I'll make a motion to hold. Is there a second?
Second, Hillis.
All right. Motion by Westmoreland, second by Hilla.
The vote is open.
Mr. Bond?
Aye.
Mike, where are you? I want to join you.
No kidding. Me too.
I'm in my skin. When I jump out, you can jump in.
Oh, man. We're all nuts. 6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is held. That brings us to the end of our legislative agenda. I will entertain Ms. Smith's motion to adjourn in a moment. Ms. Bulandini, upon adjournment, I assume we need 5 or 6 minutes to reset things and have people sign off this line and then call back onto this line for our...
Sorry,
no, we don't.
The public hearing is listed as an agenda item. You would just need to make a motion to open the hearing, and we can commence with the hearing.
All right. Then I will look at that. Item number M, public hearing. I will make a motion to open the public hearing. Does that need a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? There we go. Westmoreland makes a motion. Hillis makes a second.
And the vote is open.
Mr. Bond, would you like to go into another public hearing?
Aye.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. All right. 5 yeas, 0 nays. 6 yeas, 0 nays. The public hearing is open. Mr. Higgs, are you still here? And if so, would you please present the slide deck for the public hearing?
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone, again. So this is the basic information about the proposed special service district. Basic facts for the SSD, proposed SSD is a millage increase of 2. And this will ultimately drive enough revenue to support a $100 million bond for Beltline trail design, construction, and acquisition. And moving to the next slide. So roughly, we believe that there is in this proposed district roughly 3,500 parcels with an assessed value of $3.1 billion. And again, for today's purposes, for the purposes of this SSD, proposed SSD, we are proposing a $2 million increase to support the Beltline mainline trail construction, design, and acquisition. that concludes my report.
Thank you much, sir. Mr. Massenberg, if you would please play our public comment.
Hello, my name is Rita Neely. I'm calling, I live in the Underwood Hills neighborhood. I was calling because I have some concerns about the proposed SSD, specifically having to do with the fact that our district has paid in quite a bit of money and we haven't seen any development in our area. To remedy this going forward, I ask that you use the money that has been collected in a specific area to actually plan build the Beltline in this area retroactively and in the future. And to make sure that that's being accounted for, I also ask that you start earmarking those dollars and accounting for them so that we're not spending money in a different part of the city when it was collected in our northwest area. And if that can't be achieved, then I ask that you stop taxing our commercial community for these things, because they're not benefiting from them, nor are the residents that go to those businesses benefiting from them. Thank you, and have a great day.
Hey, my name is James. I'm calling about the tax issue on the west side. I'm a small business owner on the west side. All small businesses are concerned about right now is trying to respond to the impacts of COVID and keep our employees on the payroll. I mean, this is the middle of COVID, and the increased taxes just seems crazy. I'm opposed to this tax unless you can earmark funds for the northwest section of the trail and delay the tax levy for several years. Thank you for having the opportunity to voice my opinion.
Hi, this is Jim Martin. I am the chair of Neighborhood Planning Unit D and of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board CDHS Committee. I'm calling to comment on the proposed Beltline Special Services District. I have some comments on the other line as well. I personally am opposed to this. APAP's position on this is that we are calling for delay in action to allow sufficient time for public review and comment, specifically by listing this for review and comment on the agendas of all of the affected NPUs. NPUD's position on this is that we are calling for denial of this. We believe that it has not been properly thought through and that the boundaries of the proposed district are arbitrary, particularly in our area where they will impose the tax on many local businesses that will see no benefit whatsoever from the project. Additionally, we believe that the project is desperately in need of rebaselining before any new taxes are imposed, as what is currently being sold as completion is not in fact completion at all unless there is some new definition of completion that has not been shared with the public. Moreover, there is no budget associated with this, so all that you are really being asked to do is to impose a new tax that will simply throw more money at the project in the hopes that something good will come of it, and that seems ill-considered, particularly since the current budget for the project out of the tax allocation district is more than sufficient to complete the trail network if that is all that is sought to do, and that seems to be all that is sought to do. So unless there is some evidence for some other reason why more money is needed for this project, I see no reason to pursue the Special Services District. In addition, I would like to point out that Article 9, Section 5, Paragraph 2 of the Georgia Constitution states that a referendum is required before debt can be issued, secured by the Special Services District. And absent that debt, which is not contemplated by those advocating this, there would be no point.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Hollister. I represent Upper West Side CID in Sub-Area 8 of the Beltline planning area. Our CID's biggest concern is that the SSD does not ensure that the 2 miles of future Beltline in our CID actually get built. Right now, we are last on the implementation list. And this SSD, when combined with other funding sources, only ensures that the Beltline gets $300 million out of a $350 million price tag of finishing the trail. So that last $50 million of the capital stack represents our area. Yet, our area has contributed over $70 million to the Beltline already in the past 15 years. And the group of tax allocation district properties within our CID currently funds over 20% of the current tax allocation district revenue. RCID's section of the SSD will make up the same or more percentage of the SSD revenue. We're asking CDHS committee, as a major contributor to this SSD, to amend the legislation to confirm that properties in Subarea 8 will see some benefit that justifies our inclusion in the tax district. We're only supportive of the SSD if the taxes collected from Subarea 8 are only spent on the trail in Subarea 8. Thank you.
This is Robin Rosenberg, and I've been a commercial property owner in Blandtown for 40 years. In the week since I've heard about the SSD, I've attended many meetings, including several sessions with the Beltline. And after looking more closely, I'm requesting that even more urgently that you consider postponing or denying this SSD. In our Northwest area, there is no plan, none that has been articulated in any of these meetings, although we're told there's a proposal for a design, which is not a design. I have no assurance where the Beltline will go, who will fall within the half-mile either side area, or what it will look like once and if it's built. The initial Beltline plans in our area included transit stations and more, and those TAD dollars that we've been paying for the past 15 years have not been a benefit to this area. There's been no investment in the Beltline in this northwest portion. It feels as though we were promised something big and wonderful and haven't seen anything yet. And in the end, there might not be enough money for much more than a goat path, from what I can tell. Pandemic aside, there is a lot of talk about a 2 mil tax, which, in spite of what is said, is not inconsequential. Then I read an announcement that the request is actually 2.5 mil, so another misleading statement. And $50 million short, with no transparency on the charitable portion and nothing clear about the last $50 million. We're in the final and most difficult portion of the Beltline, and I would love to see it happen, but this feels hurried and unprepared. At the very least, the taxes raised for a portion of the Beltline should be committed to this area. I hope you'll wait for a better plan with a clear accountability. Thanks a lot.
This is Scott Pendergrast, General Partner and owner of Little 5 Points Partnership. I ask that the City Council members do not rush to approve a property tax increase of 2.5 mils on commercial properties in a Beltline Special Service District. My Little 5 Points Partnership is owner of the building at 1099 Euclid Avenue at Little 5 Points and is leased to Variety Playhouse, a music venue that has been closed since March 2020 because of the pandemic. While the Special Service District is intended to include properties within a half mile on either side of the Beltline, my Variety Playhouse property is a 3/4 mile walk from the nearest point on the Beltline, which is at the Freedom Park Path intersection. In 2020, I paid a total of $33,415 in property taxes on my Variety Playhouse property, and $7,775 of that went to the City of Atlanta's General Fund, Bonds, and Parks. The remaining $25,600 went to Atlanta Public Schools, Fulton County Government, and Little 5 Points CID. A 2.5 mil tax increase on a Beltline for a Beltline Special Service District would add $1,900 to my annual tax bill, which would be a 24% increase above the $7,775 in property taxes I now pay annually to the city. The Beltline benefits the entire city of Atlanta, and I suggest that the burden of bridging the Beltline's funding gaps be shared citywide. Thank you, Scott Pendergrast.
My name is Renee Wright. I am the last year's president of the Blandtown Neighborhood Association. I am in Subarea 8. I have grave concerns about this SSD millage tax. Despite Subarea 8 contributing substantially to the Beltline, the ABI coffers over the last decade plus, we have received, as of yet, little to no benefit. Blandtown thus far has had no property acquisition, no specific planned route, no timetable for planning, much less a timetable for completion, and no answers ABI can give us as to when we will have these things. I am loath to support another blank check for ABI if, after 16 years, they had not even begun to put any of that money into our segment of the Beltline. The west side of the Beltline has supported the east side of the Beltline for a decade, and I do not want to see more money from Sub-Area 8 collected and poured into projects that are not directly for planning and construction of an actual Beltline in Sub-Area 8. I can only support this tax if there are metrics and accountability built in to assure us that the money raised in Sub-Area 8 will result in public Beltline spaces actually being constructed in Sub-Area 8. Again, we would like metrics and accountability built in to assure us that the money raised in our area will no longer go to other projects. We want it to result in public Beltline spaces actually constructed. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Lacey Trost. I live in Blandtown in the M-West 2 community, and I'm currently the president of the M-West 2 HOA board. I'm calling to respectfully request that the City Council please provide for independent financial oversight and a funding guarantee in the proposed Beltline SSD legislation. My neighbors and I understand that the Beltline may need more funding to move forward with its plans, and we feel strongly that reasonable guardrails will help make sure Beltline preserves resources for the Northwest segment construction in 7 to 10 years. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Francis Shaw. I'm speaking on behalf of King Saltmore Center LLC, who owns approximately 55 parcels in King Salt Condo, which is a total of 99 parcels. We cover half a mile of streetfront property on West Mariana Street Northwest and 12.5 acres of land. I want to explain why this needs to be a lower mill citywide tax delayed until 2022. Small businesses are currently still struggling in this pandemic. It's not over. Many businesses are hanging on by a thread. Landlords have taken rent reductions, and a significant majority of Georgians are still not vaccinated. Your map for the Beltline tax includes multiple small businesses that are still unable to open their doors to the public due to COVID-19. Here's a real-world example of your proposed tax. At the 2.5 mils listed in the AJC, your tax would bill small nonprofit art theater who's been closed for the whole year, all 12 months with no patrons, $800 in September. Government assistance is still difficult to obtain, but theater is still unable to apply for the Save Our Stages fund. It seems like the Beltline does not know what is happening in the real world for Atlanta small businesses. Another example is a catering company that's been affected by the pandemic. They rent multiple studios for their kitchen, their freezer, and to store their tables and chairs. Their SSD tax this September will be over $2,500. The Beltline has already broken a promise of transparency. None of our 100 studios spanning 5 street numbers received anything in the mail from the Beltline about this tax. They have not spoken to small business landlords. They have spoken to the largest rental companies and land developers in Atlanta. The council has not heard the voices of small businesses, artists, and nonprofits because the Beltline did not include them in the conversation. As a landlord, we've had over 20% turnover above our typical rate. This is due to small businesses closing from COVID-19. I know landlords have taken massive rent reductions to try and keep their tenants' small businesses afloat. When considering your tax, how can landlords pay extra when they have lost their tenants? This must be a citywide tax to reduce its financial burden. People come from all over the city to walk and enjoy the Beltline. We are looking at paying $25,000 to the SSD this September. Taxing businesses near the Beltline will increase the rental rate. This will absolutely push out small businesses, artists, and nonprofits, and legacy commercial renters. How high will the rental rates need to be in 15, 20, 30 years to cover?
Hi, my name is Lauren Welsh. I'm the Executive Director of the Little Five Points Community Improvement District, or CID. I'm calling to express my opposition to the Beltline SSD legislation as currently drafted. The process has been extremely rushed, and the maps have been drafted are arbitrary in their nature, picking and choosing properties well outside of the original TAD and overlay maps simply to pocket additional funds. As a community improvement district, our sole purpose is to fund local infrastructure needs that the city cannot meet. Our members have chosen to be part of the CID so they can tax themselves an additional amount to fill these investment gaps in our local community. CIDs are a tool that were created by the City of Atlanta government well before the Beltline was even being considered, and this legislation is threatening our very existence. Little Five Points CID is by far the smallest community improvement district in the city, bringing in a tiny fraction of the amount to our larger peers. To add this Beltline 2.5 millage rate on top of only the smaller CIDs that include ourselves, West End, and Upper West Side, while the entire city benefits from the success of the Beltline, is inequitable. We believe this tax should be spread among all beneficiaries in the city, including single-family homeowners, whose property values have greatly increased as a result of the Beltline. This would be the most equitable and affordable approach and would be of minimal impact when spread across the city. In addition, we asked that the Beltline SSD map be redrawn to take into account the reconfiguration of the East Side Trail to Krog Street that eliminated the spur to Inman Park Reynolds-Town MARTA Station. As a result of that spur being eliminated years ago, multiple properties that are currently being drawn into the SSD map are well outside the bounds. Little Five Point CID joins with our fellow impacted CIDs and the Old Fourth Ward Business Association to ask that City Council slow down and take a very careful look at the boundaries of the other terms of proposed SSD legislation and the inequity and negative impacts of the SSD as currently proposed. There is a better way to accomplish the citywide goal of completing the Beltline Trail, and it should not be pushed through by arbitrary deadlines.
Hi, my name is Stephen Lindsay. I live in Underwood Hills, and I'm calling about the Beltline SSD. I'm opposed to it in its current state because there's no provision to ensure that funds spent in our area after being collected from the local businesses or used on the Beltline projects that are in this area. I'd like you to add a provision that ensures that some funds are reserved for our area in proportion to the revenue raised from local businesses. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacey Davis, and I'm calling in regards to the Northwest quadrant of the future Beltline. The Northwest Beltline Trail has never been studied, and the exact trail location is not confirmed. I am very concerned about what happens if the trail location is different than the line shown on maps. And properties that have been taxed for 20 years end up more than half a mile away from the Beltline. Where are the guarantees to property owners shouldering this tax that they will actually be within a half mile of a Beltline trail? I confirmed that our local neighborhood taco restaurant will have to pay $800 per year, and they have no assurance that the Beltline will be anywhere near them. Now does not seem to be the time to put this tax through. We need to wait until there is an alignment and perhaps earmark some funds for this area so the Beltline doesn't go over budget somewhere and not get to us. Thank you.
Chairman Westmoreland and committee members, my name is Joe Santoro with the Council for Quality Growth, a not-for-profit trade association representing over 300 companies comprised of architects, attorneys, contractors, developers, engineers, financial executives with a vested interest in quality growth and development in Metro Atlanta. Today, I wanted to just reiterate the Council's continued support of completing the Atlanta Beltline with the creation of the Beltline Special Services District. The Atlanta Beltline has unarguably revitalized the city, spurred economic development, and positioned Atlanta as a unique venue option. The sustained assistance of SSD would provide a multitude of benefits in addition to allowing for the completion of the Beltline. The Council for Quality Growth is fully in support and stands ready to help at any time as you deliberate the creation of the Beltline SSD. Thank you.
This is John Izzard. I live in Emmons Park. I own real estate in Little Five Points, and I serve on the Little Five Points CID. I'm calling to express concern about the way the map is drawn coming through Little Five Points. It doesn't follow the same half-mile radius that it does in other parts of the along the Beltline, causing properties in Little Five Points to be taxed for services they're not going to receive. Specifically, I'm concerned that the city helped us set up our CID, but are now allowing or proposing to allow the SSD map to double up on that area, which is going to make it hard for us to get more people to join our CID. These are tenants, specifically tenants of my real estate, are having a very hard time getting it by, and to add this extra tax is a significant burden to them. As it's been explained to me that the line is drawn in an arbitrary way and will be subject to legal challenge, which doesn't make sense that the Beltline would want to put itself in I think the map should be redrawn to mile radius only, and or that this matter ought to be slowed down so that the affected parties can be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Nicole McGee Hall, representing the West End Community Improvement District. I'm calling to say that although we support the Beltline and the completion of the trail, we have concerns regarding the legislation and being able to fully realize the things that we would like to see happen. Our CID is going to lose revenue with the creation of the SSD, and so we have sent a resolution to City Council, and so we will just reference that resolution, and we ask that you reference that resolution to show the things that we would like to see included as part of the legislation, which would address some of the monies that we will be losing when the owners are taxed without having to consent. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing the results.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Hart. I live in Underwood Hills in sub-area 8. I'm calling to express my support for tonight's vote in order to ensure that the Beltline is fully funded and built out, especially as it starts to head towards the northwest side of town. We've been waiting for about 16 years to see some development along the Beltline, including trails, waiting very patiently while other parts of the city have utilized the taxes that we happily paid to see their portions built. And I think it's really important to the city and to the northwest side of town to make sure that we complete the entire Beltline, even if it does require more funding. So please vote tonight in a way that ensures the Beltline remains funded and we're able to complete it, especially on the northwest side.
In 2019, my husband and I purchased a home in Reynoldstown, in part due to the proximity of the Beltline. I realized the desire to complete the trail for the benefit of connectivity, but not at all costs. I cannot support this SSD because it is a strategic tax on renters and businesses, many of which are not able to participate in this upcoming election for council members. I don't believe this is a coincidence. While the vision of the Beltline is a grandiose one, it is coming at far too high a cost. Why is City Council not questioning the ability of Atlanta Beltline, Inc. to be good stewards of these funds? The organization is far overdue for rebaselining. How can an organization that spent $250,000 on printing in 1 year be the right organization to complete the trail? How much has Path Foundation spent on printing in the same time period? Why should our small businesses and renters be forced to make up Beltline's deficit when they have made no efforts to reduce this overhead? As a voter, as a resident, I ask for City Council to expect better accountability from an organization with a track record of overpromising and under-delivering, underestimating costs, and excess spending on overhead. City Council, please vote no on the SSD. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Hart. I live in the Underwood Hills neighborhood in the northwest part of the city. I understand that there's a vote or an item on the table about how we fund the Beltline. I would like to add that we, in my part of the city, have been paying these taxes for many years now and patiently waiting our turn. And the idea that the Beltline could run out of money before we're able to see any benefits from that is very distressing to me. I encourage you to do what's necessary to make sure that we can turn that into a reality for our part of the city. It's brought wonderful things to other areas, and we need that here as well. And I believe we deserve our turn. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your support. Bye.
Hi there.
One moment, please.
Hi there. My name is Heather Sheets. I live in the Underwood Hills neighborhood in Atlanta. And I've lived here for over 10 years. I wanted to call and voice my concern regarding the property tax and how we've been contributing to this tax allocation for the Beltline since 2005, and that our area's contributions have made over 20% of the revenue in 2020. So that being said, over the past 16 years, we've been contributing, and unfortunately, we haven't seen any development with the Beltline in our neck of the woods on the northwest side of the territory. And while we really do enjoy the Beltline, all the amenities that it offers, not just for us in Underwood Hills, but also the Atlanta community and city more broadly. But we would really like to see that our hard-earned tax dollars are being used towards the infrastructure and the development of the Beltline in our neighborhood. We'd love to start seeing that come to life. And that's it. So thank you so much for your attention, and appreciate all you all do for Atlanta and our community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John O'Brien. I'm a resident and also the president of the Blandtown Neighborhood Association, calling to express my strong opposition to the proposed SSD. Let me start by saying that I am supportive of the Beltline and the development of the Beltline in Blandtown. That said, property taxes in my area have already contributed and are currently contributing more than 20% of the total revenue raised within a TAD, and have been doing so for the past 15 years. Despite that, ABI has done little for Blandtown as far as property acquisitions, the route solidification, and indeed there hasn't even been a timetable for planning, much less completion of the Beltline in Blandtown. Again, it's been 15 years, and I'm loath to give another blank check to ABI to complete a project that hasn't even begun to put any of that money into our segment of the Beltline. In addition, the passage of an SSD in the middle of the pandemic and a pandemic-fueled recession that is already straining local businesses is tone deaf. And even worse, many of the local businesses that will be impacted by the SSD in Blandtown, may see little or no benefits from the projects funded by the revenue, since the Beltline route hasn't even been identified. I can only support this tax, bottom line, if there are clearly identified metrics and accountability built into the ordinances and written assurances that the money raised in Blandtown and Sub-Area A will be earmarked and guaranteed to result in public Beltline spaces actually being built, constructed, and designed in Blandtown and Sub-Area A. I thank you for your consideration.
All right, that is our final comment from the public. Thank you, everyone, again, for reaching out today. I will make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second, Smith.
Thank you. Motion by Westmoreland, a second by Smith. If you will please open that vote. Mr. Bond,
Aye.
you still here? There we go.
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. Ms. Shepard? And or Ms. Archibong? There we go. Thank you. Okay. If you will close that vote.
Is it my turn yet?
It is almost your time. 5 yeas, 0 nays. The public hearing is closed. That concludes our agenda for the day. Ms. Smith?
Really? Mr. Bond, does have anything? No announcements? Motion to adjourn.
Dr. Shepard.
There we
yes, yes. We got lots of factors. Let's go.
I do have an announcement.
Knock yourself out.
The Post-Wanted Large Office will host a special town hall meeting on March the 18th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. It'll be a virtual Zoom meeting. The focus will be on COVID-19 vaccinations and testing and general information that relates to that, and a special focus on domestic violence that's plagued our city. Domestic violence is up 48% in Atlanta over the last calendar year. We'll have organizations and resources ranging from Fulton County to our own courts and police. We will be sending out a robocall and a citywide text Zoom link so that people can participate. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I have a motion from... Sure. A motion from Councilmember Smith, a second by Councilmember Shepherd. On unanimous consent, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Yeah, good meeting. Good keeping us cats straight.